Good morning. Welcome back to Deb's True Crime Notebook. We'll reread the documents for you so you don't have to. Grab a cup of coffee, sit back. It's going to be a long day, people. This is day one in the trial of Richard Allen. And we just want to pause for a second and say that our prayers are with the families. Let's remember Libby and Abby and pray for justice for them today and all through this trial. So what we have now is a defense motion. It's called a brief in response to prosecution's motion in limina regarding composite sketches. Let's get into it. State of Indiana versus Richard Allen. Brief in response to prosecution's motion in limina regarding composite sketches. Comes now the accused Richard Allen by counsel, and for his response to the motion in limina by the prosecution regarding sketches states as follows. 1. The prosecution argues that composite sketches are inadmissible due to the fact that they were intended as an investigative tool to generate leads to identify a suspect. In fact, these sketches were not related to the identification of a suspect. Therefore, the sketches would not be relevant under Indiana R. Evid 401, state's motion in limina regarding composite sketches. 2. At the hearing, the prosecution argued that the composite sketches of the suspect are not relevant because they are infused with subjectivity both by the forensic artist and the witness. 3. The fact that there may be subjective input in a sketch does not make the sketch irrelevant. Rather said subjectively should go to the weight given it by the jury and not to issues regarding admissibility. 4. Evidence is relevant when it has any tendency to make the existence of any fact that is of consequences to the determination of the action more probable or less probable than it would be without the evidence. Indiana Evid Rule 401, Joyner v. State 678, NE2D 386389, Indiana 1997. 5. The composite sketches in this matter are images of individuals the witness saw on the bridge prior to the victim's disappearance and on County Road 300 North after the murders. 6. To the extent that the sketches do not resemble Richard Allen, they are highly relevant. 7. Evidence which tends to show that someone else committed the crime logically makes it less probable that the defendant committed the crime and thus meets the definition of relevance in Rule 401, Joyner v. State 678 NE2D 386389, Indiana 1997. 8. The prosecution argues that the composite sketches are inadmissible because they are investigative tools. However, this does not make the sketches irrelevant and inadmissible. Investigative reports by police and other law enforcement personnel are admissible under Indiana R. Evid 8038 when offered by the accused in a criminal case, Weishart v. State 693 NE2D 2334 FN 7, Indiana 1998. 9. Since 1974, the Indiana Supreme Court has held that composite sketches do not violate the hearsay rule when the witness and officer creating the sketch testify and are available for cross-examination. Roe v. State 314 NE2D 745749, Indiana 1974. 10. While Roe was decided prior to the codification of the Indiana Rules of Evidence, the Roe Court relied on the reason for hearsay rule, stating that the principal reasons for the exclusion of hearsay evidence are that the out-of-court declarant was not under oath, not subject to confrontation by the trier of fact, and most importantly, not subject to cross-examination by the accused. 11. The purpose behind the hearsay rule did not change and was not modified upon the codification of the Indiana Rules of Evidence. 12. Since the Indiana Rules of Evidence were codified, courts continued to acknowledge that the fundamental purpose of the hearsay rule is to preserve the right to cross-examine the declarant. Powell v. State 714 NE2D 624, Indiana 1999. 13. To the extent the prosecution is arguing that, due to the subjective nature of the sketches, there is some blanket rule that composite sketches are not relevant because they are investigative reports, this is simply untrue. Indeed, composite sketches have long been admitted in criminal cases in Indiana. Roe 314 NE 2D at 749, Johnson v. State 472 NE 2D 892, 908, Indiana 1985, Cuckey v. State, 483 NE 2D 788, Indiana Court Appellate, 1985. Gregory Bay v. Hanks, 332 F3D 1036 1045, 7th Circuit Court Appellate 2003. U.S. v. Farmer, 2024, WL 2372780, USDC and D, Indiana 2024. 14. Former Special Agent Plants also admitted that the standards and guidelines for forensic art and facial identification promulgated by the International Association of Identification contain the best practices for forensic artists. 15. Former Special Agent Plants further testified that it's the best practice that the witness may be instructed that his signature will be the feature that allows him to identify the image in court if necessary. Emphasis added. There would be no reason for a witness to sign a sketch in order to identify it in court if composite sketches are subjective, investigative tools to generate leads and not to identify suspects. 16. The prosecution further argues that the witnesses who assisted in the preparation of the composite sketches of the bridge guy would testify that they did not see the person depicted in their sketch for a sufficient length of time to allow them to positively identify the defendant. This argument fails as the state offered no evidence hearing as to the amount of time any witness who assisted in the creation of the composite sketches viewed the suspect. 17. The prosecution further argues that if the composite sketches are relevant, the probative value is substantially outweighed by the unfair prejudice, confusing the issues and misleading the jury, and therefore should be excluded under Indiana R. Evid 403. 18. At the hearing, the prosecution argued that the composite sketches are inadmissible in that because they are renderings used in the investigation process of recognition and not identification of a suspect. However, if a sketch is used to recognize a suspect and that sketch does not resemble the accused, this is highly relevant and implicates Mr. Allen's right to confront and cross-examine witness under the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution and Article 1, Section 1, 13A of Indiana Constitution to meet every witness against him face to face. 19. Former Special Agent Plants testified that witnesses often provide a rating for the sketch on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 not resembling the suspect and 10 being an exact replica of the suspect. 20. While it is conceivable that a sketch that was produced and to which a witness applied a low score to the sketch could be misleading and confusing, a sketch with a high score that highly resembles a suspect would not be confusing or misleading. Furthermore, any confusion could easily be dealt with on direct or cross-examination. 21. The prosecution concedes that these sketches were used for recognition of leads in an investigatory stage of this matter. The sketches are widely disseminated across the state for years, and Richard Allen has the right under the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution at Article 1, Section 13A of the Indiana Constitution to meet the proponents of the sketches and to cross-examine them as to identifying characteristics of the sketches. Wherefore, the accused Richard Allen by counsel respectfully requests the court to deny the state's motion in limina regarding composite sketches and for all other just and proper relief in the premises. Respectfully submitted, Jennifer Auger, 21684-41. Okay, so now we have added on an update to this video. Judge Gull has ruled that the sketches are not admissible in the court in front of the jury. As soon as we have the documents on that, we'll let you see them and hear them. And there you have it, the first document released today. We'll be back with a lot more today, including updates as to what's been talked about in the trial. Thanks for watching Deb's True Crime Notebook. Don't forget to do all the things like subscribe, send this to a friend, and leave a comment.